My name is Vonnie Edwards, and I'd like to introduce you to the Virginia ham. We're going to learn about the preparation and cooking and serving of Virginia ham. And I'd like to show you right here is probably how your ham will come to you in a cloth bag. This is an Edwards Virginia ham. It's aged between 4 and 6 months. And this is important to remember. Right down here is the weight, because as you get ready to cook it, we need to know that this 12-pound ham, we're going to cook 20 minutes per pound. So 20 times that would be 240 minutes, and you divide 60 into that, so you'll come up between 4 and 5 hours. Okay, now, let me show you what a Virginia ham looks like. First of all, you'll notice it's wrapped in paper, and then we open it up, and sometimes it'll have some mold on it and pepper. As you can see, right up in here is some pepper. And what we're going to do is to soak this over here in my sink overnight. That's very important, to soak your Virginia ham overnight. And what we're going to do is put it over here. And I usually use room temperature water, and we want to cover it so that it can soak in there overnight. And then after we do that, we'll get ready for the next day's cooking. Now, what I like to do is cook it the day before my party or the event that's happening. So as soon as we soak this overnight, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, we have had our ham in soak overnight, and now it's ready to scrub. Okay, let me lift it out, get it out of that water, bring it over to my sink. And as you notice, there's a net on here. They had it hanging up in the smokehouse with that net on it, okay? I'm going to cut that off temporarily because we put that back on when we get ready to cook it. It helps us lift it around in the pot because we do have to turn it over in the middle of the cooking procedure. All right, you see all that pepper on there? It's loose, but we're going to scrub it off with the brush. Okay, and a good sturdy brush is always a help to get this pepper off. You see how that's coming off real easy. And of course, sometimes there'll be mold on there, and we're going to scrub that off too. There's nothing harmful about the mold at all. It's simply part of the curing procedure. Okay, now let's go to our next step. We're going to go over to the stove and get ready to cook the ham. We have put the ham that we've just scrubbed over in this cooking vessel, and you can see it's very large. We call it a ham boiler. And what we want to do is immerse the ham in water completely. Now, if you look into the ham boiler, you can notice the ham isn't quite covered, and we put the net back on it because that helps handling. We are going to turn the ham in the middle of the process. Let me finish covering up the ham with water, and you notice we use 2 burners because that does help distribute the heat a little bit better. Okay, let me cover this up. One more handful of water, and I think we'll have it. There we go. That's very important to have your ham covered with water. Okay, we've brought the ham that we've scrubbed over to the kettle, and as you recall, we filled the kettle with water, and I've turned the burners on to high to bring it to a boil, and then we immediately turned it down to get a slow, slow simmer. And at this point, you want to be sure you check your time on the clock, because for a 12 to 14 pound ham, we'll be cooking between 4 and 5 hours. Okay, so we have it on a slow simmer. And what I like to do is take the thermometer, put it into the water. Now, we're talking about water temperature only. At this point, it would be between 185 and 190 degrees for the water only. And I check that from time to time, but just a slow simmer is usually the rule of thumb. Okay, after we've cooked it about 2 hours, I'm going to take the 2 forks. I won't do it this right now, but usually what I do is take it and roll it over. It's very easy to do, and then you start cooking it that way. Now, another important characteristic that you have to remember is to add some hot water if your water has simmered off. That's very important. Okay, now, after it's been simmering between the 4 and 5 hours, we're ready to check the internal temperature of the ham. So we take our meat thermometer and we're going to insert it into the heart of the ham. And it should register 160 degrees internal temperature of the ham. At that point, your ham has completed the cooking. And then we're ready to remove it from the water. I want to back up a little bit. I failed to mention the fact that when you're immersed or you put that thermometer into the heart of the ham, you need to be sure not to touch the bone because that will give you a false reading. Okay, the ham has been cooked and now we're ready to put on a glaze. Now you might have a special glaze right out of the jar, which is fine, but what I usually do before I put on the glaze, I start to cut off this skin. And that isn't hard to do at all. And you know, you can let your ham cool a little while before you do this if you feel it's too hot to get started. But I usually just sort of pull it back, get back down here, and we come on over here. You want to try to be careful not to expose too much. You want a little bit of fat on there. A little bit of fat doesn't hurt at all. Okay, and we're coming over here. And you know, there's a lot of uses. After you've eaten your ham, there's a lot of wonderful uses. I grind it up and use it in ham salad or garnish for quiche or several other ways that many ways you can use that. And we do have some recipes that are available when you order your ham. We'll be glad to send you some recipes on how to prepare your ham and how to use your ham in various recipes once you get it. In the cooked product also. Okay, now what I do is just trim a little bit of this ham off right over here. Give it a little look. Now I'm not going to cut all this ham cut this away because we'd like to get started on showing you how we do our garnish. Now, after I've cut all that off, we're going to score the ham like this. And you can do that before or after you put the brown sugar on. And what I use is just brown sugar and cloves. Okay. Now, I think what I'll do is cut those other scorings after I get the brown sugar on, because sometimes it's hard to see your lines after you put the brown sugar on. And so what I do is just hand rub that brown sugar on there while it's still warm, and that ham will really absorb that nicely. And I'll keep putting on until I feel that can't quite get much more on there, because we're going to be putting this in the oven to finish it off. And now we're ready to dot it with some cloves. And what you do is just stick them in there like that. Okay. Come right up here. And then when I get this all covered with the brown sugar and the cloves, you can score it right here like this. And that means some of that brown sugar will go right down those little crevices. Makes it real tasty when you cut a slice. Okay, now we'll go on to our finished product as we put this into the oven to let the glaze sort of melt over the ham. Okay, now we have the ham that's been in the oven that I preheated at 300 degrees and baked it with that glaze on it for between 25 and 30 minutes. And of course your oven may be hotter than that, so you just have to use your own judgment. Okay, now we're ready for the very important part of carving. And I'd like to introduce my husband, Wallace Edwards, who'll do the carving.
All right. First of all, I have a real sharp knife. I like a thin-bladed knife versus a thick-bladed knife, but it's your own personal preference, really. And you're going to start at the small end or the hock end of the ham. Your first cuts are going to be, at this point, somewhat straight down, but then each succeeding slice will be progressively more of an angle till you get to about 45-degree angle to the bone. But again, we do emphasize that you slice it as thin as possible because this is a highly flavored ham and you're enjoying it for its flavor. But like I say, take your first cuts on through here. These are going to be small slices, but don't throw them away because they have lots of uses other than on the dinner plate. But as we go farther up on the ham, when you get about along here, you're going to start getting real nice slices for your dinner plate. But please, as you go through this and get these first slices out of your way, and when you get down to the larger slices, do slice them very, very thin. Oh, that's got a good color and a good aroma. And I'm sure a real great Virginia ham flavor. Now that we're down near the center of the ham, we're starting to get real nice slices. And you can lay them over here and be prepared to go on your dinner plate. I will add this bit of information. The ham does slice easier at room temperature than it does first out of the oven or just out of your cook water. So you might keep that in mind when you're preparing your own ham.
Wallace, that looks great. Thank you.
Okay.
Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we really serve the ham. A lot of times we do it as just the main entree, but here we like to serve it with an accompanying meat. It might be turkey, or it might be chicken, or it might be seafood. But some of the precious pieces that you don't want to forget about are these little pieces that have dropped off as Wallace was carving the ham. And I use those in omelets, or maybe in a quiche, or maybe in scrambled eggs. There's just so many uses. And when your ham is finished, you have that marvelous bone. And I like to use the bone with a nice big pot of navy beans. There's nothing any tastier. The other thing, a lot of times I will grind up the residue of the ham that I've cut off the bone, and I might make a ham salad out of it. We have some recipes that we offer at Edwards that tell you how to use the ham after you have the little ends and pieces, and anytime you would like to get those, we'd be glad to send them to you. Now, here we are, we've had our dinner, and we've served it at a couple meals, and we're ready to store it for several weeks. After about 3 weeks, if you haven't finished the ham, we recommend that you slice off the remaining ham and put them in the freezer. We like to do it that way. And now, if I just store the ham in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 weeks, what I do is take a tea towel. I have a special linen tea towel that I use, and I wet it, and I wring out that moisture just as much as I can. Just get it almost dry, and I lay it over the ham like this. And then I put some Reynolds Wrap over top and store it, and that keeps your ham center nice and moist. We'd like to thank you for buying Edwards products, and we hope you enjoy them. Thank you very much.